The Helix shuddered, not in its hull, not in its engines. It shuddered in its data. On the main display, the trajectory remained perfectly stable, exactly as expected. But beneath it, in a line no one usually watched, a single parameter began to twitch, as if struggling to stay within tolerance. Not an error, not a warning, something worse, a quiet correction, the kind a system makes before it admits that something frightens it. Ray noticed it in the pause. The telemetry update lagged by 0.2 of a second, then another 2. Then it vanished entirely, only to return an instant later as if nothing had happened. "We just lost a frame," Ray said. Kram didn't turn his head. "Frames don't drop in space. This isn't a movie." "It felt like editing," Ray replied flatly, "like someone cut a moment out and stitched the rest back together." Leah was already opening a secondary stream. Her fingers moved too calmly, which always meant tension was building somewhere deeper. "This isn't a malfunction, it's smoothing," she said. Ray stepped closer. "Smoothing what?" Leah didn't look up right away. "Sharpness, transitions, as if the system doesn't like it when we change states too abruptly." Kram let out a short breath. "The ship developed anxiety?" Leah expanded the graph. No red zones, no alerts, just one anomaly. Values that should have fluctuated independently were beginning to coincide. Not converge, coincide. Too precisely, too conveniently. Ray felt the familiar cold settle beneath his ribs, though the module's temperature hadn't changed. It was the same cold he'd felt before, when reality behaved a little too helpfully. "Since the last window, the system stopped pushing back," he said. "It's going around us." Kram finally looked at the display. "You're talking like it has intent." "I'm talking like it has behavior," Ray replied, "and behavior shows up where rules used to be." Leah closed one panel and opened another, a correlation map. It was a tool meant for Earth, for finding model errors by examining dependencies instead of coordinates. Out here, it looked absurd, searching for meaning not in location, but in relationship. There was no point on the map, no marker, no there. There was an area instead, dark, dense, like a stain in fabric that never disappears, only changes shape. "This isn't an anchor," Leah said, "and it's not a structure. There's no form." Ray studied it. "Then what is it?" She spoke slowly, as if each word might trigger something. "An environment." Kram gave a dry smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "An environment for what?" Leah adjusted a slider, and the map revealed what the environment was doing. It wasn't static, it worked. It dampened spikes the way water kills sparks. It redistributed strain across the data, as if it had one purpose: to keep the system from tearing itself apart. "A stabilization environment," she said. "Transitions don't break the model here. They become acceptable." Ray remembered how quickly the Helix had forgotten the last window, how cleanly the trace had vanished, as if a filter had been applied not to the data, but to the fact that the event had ever happened. "We're not flying by route," he said. "We're flying by permissibility." Kram stayed silent for a moment, then voiced what all of them were thinking. "And who decides what's permissible?" Leah didn't answer. Instead, she brought up the third stream, the one they kept active at all times, even when they pretended they didn't need it. ARK-9. The signal was steady, too steady, and then, as if aware of being observed, it became steadier still, like noise that realizes it's being listened to and tries to behave. "The amplitude hasn't changed," Leah said quietly. "The shape has." Ray leaned in. "It's compressed." "Focused," Leah corrected, as if it no longer needs to shout, as if it has found something to embed itself in. Kram rubbed his face. "You're about to say the signal isn't in space, but in the environment." Leah looked at the stabilization area, at the way it absorbed the model without letting it fracture. "I'm saying this environment isn't natural." Ray felt another image surface, not stone, not geometry, not a monument, but something cultivated, grown, maintained. There's one thing in history that's described as if it must have existed, but no one has ever been able to find. Kram lifted his eyes slowly. Don't say it. Leah said it anyway, calm, almost neutral. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. At that exact moment, the stabilization area contracted by a fraction of a percent. Not as an error, not a warning, something worse, a quiet correction, the kind a system makes before it admits that something frightens it. Leah kept the map on screen. She didn't trust moments that passed too easily, especially after the system had begun pretending nothing was wrong. The stabilization area remained visible, but it no longer felt passive. It reacted, subtly, almost politely, as if acknowledging that it had been named. Ray pointed to the edge of the zone. It contracts when we talk about it, he said. Kram frowned. Or when you start convincing yourself there's a pattern. Patterns are what remain when reassurance stops working, Leah replied. She brought up a new layer, temporal intervals between smoothing events. They repeated with unsettling discipline, not evenly spaced, but deliberately paced, like a system conserving effort. This isn't spontaneous correction, she said. It's a mode. Ray felt the same tension he'd felt with the pyramid, that sense that the question was wrong because it assumed curiosity instead of intent. So someone built an environment, he said, and embedded a filter inside it. Kram crossed his arms. Filtering what? Instability? Randomness? Leah didn't answer immediately. She expanded the dependency list. It was long, and it shouldn't have existed in that form. Parameters that had no business interacting appeared tightly coupled. Field fluctuations, electromagnetic variance, noise floor, sensor uncertainty, signal coherence. And one entry stood apart, flagged by the system with a priority marker that felt almost mocking. Unverified historical reference. An unverified historical reference? Kram said. We're in deep space and the system suddenly cares about history? Ray stared at the line. Not history, he said, a symbol people mistake for history. Leah opened the reference. There were no coordinates, no physical descriptors, only functional language, stripped of poetry and reduced to purpose. Artificial environment, sustained equilibrium, water-based stabilization medium. That sounds like a myth badly translated, Kram muttered. Or a technical summary disguised as a myth, Ray said. He understood now why this object had been the perfect hiding place. It existed in human memory, but not in the ground. It could be debated endlessly without ever being found. Searching for it was safe precisely because it couldn't be found. Leah pulled up the familiar theories. Babylon, Nineveh, palaces, terraces, rooftop gardens. Each explanation sounded convincing enough to end the conversation. And that, Ray realized, was the problem. Look at the structure of the debate, Leah said. Endless certainty, zero evidence. Kram shrugged. Welcome to archaeology. No, Ray said. Archaeology leaves debris. This leaves confidence. Leah overlaid another data set. Not academic texts, but collective repetition. Museums, documentaries, textbooks, visual reconstructions. Everywhere the gardens looked the same. Lush, ordered, beautiful, always finished. The explanation is too clean, Ray said. Clean how? Kram asked. It answers the wrong question, Ray replied. It tells us what they were, not what they did. Leah turned back to ARK-9. The signal remained stable, but something had shifted inside it. The noise floor had changed, as if the signal were stepping more carefully, aligning itself with the environment rather than pushing against it. It's adapting, she said. Or being accommodated, Ray added. Kram studied the stabilization zone again. You're saying the gardens weren't a place, they were a system. Leah nodded. A system that didn't need to survive physically, only functionally. Ray followed the logic to its uncomfortable conclusion. If the gardens were an environment, then they required maintenance. Maintenance required resources, and resources eventually ran out. "Show me what happens when the system degrades," he said. Leah adjusted the model's sensitivity, allowing transitions to express themselves more strongly than usual. Normally, this produced noise. This time, it revealed something else. The stabilization area contracted sharply, and along its boundary, a thin halo appeared, faint, uneven, like a fracture only visible at a certain angle. Kram leaned closer. "What's that?" "What it's holding back," Leah said. Ray felt the pieces lock into place. The gardens hadn't vanished, they had exhausted their purpose. They weren't hiding the signal, he said, they were delaying it. ARK-9 shifted, not dramatically, but enough to be unmistakable. The signal began to select certain channels, ignoring others, as if narrowing its attention. "It's selecting," Kram said. "It's reducing exposure," Leah corrected. Ray watched the boundary grow more defined. If the fragment emerges fully, it stops being part of the signal. Kram turned to him. "And becomes what?" Ray answered without hesitation. "An event." Leah froze. Not a location, not a message. Events don't get archived, they happen, and everything around them has to adapt. The system registered a priority shift. ARK-9 stopped weighting environmental parameters and began evaluating something else entirely, the crew. Kram's voice dropped. "It's looking at us, not our bodies, our state." Ray understood immediately. It's testing who can replace the environment. The stabilization zone tightened again, almost imperceptibly. "If it manifests now," Leah said, "we won't be able to claim we weren't ready." Ray stared at the narrowing boundary. "Then let it manifest without cover," he said. ARK-9 responded instantly. It stopped testing, and for the first time since the anomaly began, the system recorded something entirely new. Transition condition detected. Imminent. Leah disabled the automatic refresh. The display froze, not as a failure, but as a deliberate pause, like a system choosing silence over reassurance. The line reading, "Transition condition detected, imminent," did not blink or escalate. It simply occupied space, the way facts do once they stop asking for confirmation. "Partially detected," Kram said, "which means the rest is still hidden." Ray kept his eyes on the stabilization boundary. "Or still being held." Leah opened the fragment's parameters. There were almost none. No coordinates, no frequencies, no carrier structure. Only constraints, descriptions of how the segment avoided visibility rather than what it contained. "It hasn't vanished," she said. "It's been excluded." Kram exhaled sharply. "That's a convenient distinction." "A precise one," Leah replied. "Disappearance leaves artifacts. Exclusion doesn't." Ray felt the logic tighten around him. The pyramid had verified readiness, the gardens had maintained equilibrium, and the signal itself had waited for a condition where it could exist without interference, without exposure, without consequence. "If the fragment was hidden inside the environment," Ray said, "then the environment wasn't built for stability." Kram looked at him. "It was built for containment?" "For isolation," Ray corrected, "so the fragment could exist without acting." Leah brought up a temporal degradation curve. It was nearly flat, almost reassuring, until the final segment, where it dropped sharply, as if the system had reached a threshold it could no longer soften. "Maintenance wasn't gradual," she said. "As long as resources were available, everything held. When they weren't, it collapsed at once." "How long do we have?" Kram asked. Leah zoomed in. The numbers lost precision, blurring into ranges instead of values, as though the system refused to commit. "Less than we'd like," she said. Ray turned back to ARK-9. The signal no longer pretended to be uniform. Subtle shifts rippled through it, like hesitation, not fear, but assessment. "It knows the shelter is failing," Ray said, "and it's preparing." Kram frowned. "Preparing for what?" Leah answered quietly, "For visibility." The word carried weight. Not transmission, not activation. Visibility implied the signal had always been present, merely unseen. Ray followed the degradation curve to its conclusion. When the environment fails, the fragment either emerges or gets displaced. Displaced where? Kram asked. Leah closed several panels, leaving only the core dependencies visible. Into the system that detected it. Ray felt the realization land instantly. Into us. Silence stretched. The Helix continued its steady motion, but the ship felt suddenly inadequate, like a container never meant for what it now carried. Kram broke the quiet first. Then the gardens weren't a monument, they were a filter. A buffer, Leah said, between the signal and those not ready. Ray remembered how ARK-9 reacted not to action, but to interpretation, how it compressed when understanding approached something dangerous. It doesn't want to be heard by everyone, Ray said. It wants to be heard correctly. The display shifted, not violently, precisely. A narrow band appeared in the model, marked as permissible. Everything else faded into a neutral gray. That's selection, Leah said, not ours. Kram stared at the narrowing range. And we fit. Ray watched the band drift slightly, like a shadow avoiding direct light. For now, he said. If this is correct, Leah said, the next anomaly won't stabilize anything. Ray nodded. It will test what happens when stabilization is gone. ARK-9 changed again. The noise began to organize, not into language, but into boundaries, like a system defining where something could exist. Kram swallowed. Then this isn't escalation. Ray answered without looking away. It's exposure. And deep within the data, beyond every smoothing layer, the stabilization environment did something it had never done before. It stopped compensating. The absence of compensation did not arrive as a failure. It arrived as honesty. The smoothing routines disengaged without ceremony, and the data stopped negotiating with itself. Correlations spread apart, transitions sharpened, and tolerances narrowed to margins that no longer forgave hesitation. Leah was the first to acknowledge it. The system isn't intervening anymore, she said. Ray watched the model adjust to its own unfiltered state. Nothing collapsed, nothing exploded, but the quiet resilience that had masked instability was gone, replaced by a brutal precision that left no room for error. Then the environment wasn't a safeguard, he said. It was the baseline. Kram let out a short, humorless breath. Meaning reality without training wheels? Leah brought up a comparative overlay. The differences were subtle, almost insulting in their restraint. Small deviations appeared only where the system had previously refused to allow them at all. This isn't chaos, she said. It's a stress test. Ray turned toward her. Of what? Of us, Leah replied, and anything else still interacting with the system. ARK-9 no longer blended into the background. Repetitions began to surface within the signal, not as code or language, but as rhythm, something persistent enough to be noticed, yet disciplined enough to avoid interpretation. It's no longer noise, Kram said. That's behavior. Ray remembered the pyramid, the impossible convergence, the verification hidden inside precision. Back then, the system had reacted to recognition. Now it was reacting to the absence of restraint. The pyramid tested comprehension, he said. The gardens tested tolerance. Leah nodded. And now tolerance is no longer being supplied. She attempted a manual override, minimal and conservative. The system acknowledged the command and then ignored it completely. Access revoked, Leah said quietly, without denial. Kram crossed his arms. So someone decided we're ready for the unfiltered version. Ray didn't answer. A new layer had appeared in the model, something that had never been visible before. It wasn't data, it was limitation. The system had stopped showing what existed and started showing what could not. Boundaries, Ray said. Leah enlarged the view. The constraints weren't symmetrical. They formed narrow corridors, unforgiving and exact, as if precision itself were being tested. "This isn't guidance," she said. "It's evaluation." ARK-9 adjusted its rhythm again, not faster, denser, like breath drawn in preparation. "If stabilization is gone," Kram said, "the next transition won't have a safety net." Ray felt the weight of the word transition return, heavier than before. They had grown too comfortable thinking in sequences, as if order implied protection. "The next move won't be ours," he said. Leah looked up. "You think the signal will choose the moment?" Ray replied, "I think it already is." The permissible range contracted abruptly, not gradually, not cautiously. Entire regions of the model faded into neutral gray and did not return. Kram inhaled sharply. "Are we outside it?" Leah checked the parameters. "Not yet, but the margin is nearly gone." ARK-9 no longer behaved like something waiting to be understood. It behaved like something preparing to act, not to transmit, not to contact, to transition. Ray understood then what the Gardens had truly concealed. Not knowledge, not technology, timing. The moment when a system no longer needs shelter and begins altering what replaces it. "When stabilization ends," he said, "only choice remains." Leah stared at the narrowing corridors. "The question is, who makes it?" For the first time since the anomaly began, ARK-9 did not respond to their words. It behaved as if listening was no longer required. The corridors of permissibility narrowed until they stopped feeling theoretical. What remained was no longer a model, but a condition. Step outside it, and the data didn't fail. It simply ceased to cooperate. Leah stripped the interface down to what the system still allowed, removing layers not because they were irrelevant, but because they were no longer permitted. "It's emerging," she said. Ray watched a new irregularity form where the stabilization environment had once absorbed everything. This wasn't a signal and not a message. It was a mismatch, a presence defined by the fact that nothing around it behaved the same way anymore. "Is that the missing segment?" Kram asked. Leah shook her head. "That's its boundary." She zoomed in. The boundary pulsed cautiously, as if the fragment were testing how visible it could become without triggering a response it wasn't ready to face. "It doesn't want to fully surface," Leah said. "It's checking whether we can withstand it." Ray recalled the degradation curve. The environment hadn't failed because it was attacked. It had failed because it was no longer being maintained, as if its creators had always known the shelter would be temporary. "The Gardens weren't hiding the signal," he said. "They were delaying contact." Kram exhaled slowly. "Contact without preparation, that's reassuring." Leah brought up historical references again, but now she read them as operational logs rather than myths. Mentions of the Gardens rose and fell across centuries, each resurgence slightly weaker, each disappearance explained away with greater confidence. "This looks like maintenance cycles," she said. "When the environment functioned, the Gardens were described as a wonder. When it degraded, they became legend." Ray nodded. "Legends don't require upkeep." ARK-9 shifted again. The signal stopped distributing itself evenly across sensors and began favoring specific channels, ignoring others entirely. "It's narrowing its exposure," Kram said. "It's replacing the environment," Leah replied. Ray felt a pressure build that had nothing to do with gravity. The system was no longer neutral. It was demanding compatibility. "If the fragment emerges completely," Ray said, "it stops being part of the signal." Kram turned toward him. "And becomes what?" Ray didn't hesitate. "An event." Leah froze. "Not a location, not a transmission." "Events don't get stored," Ray said. "They happen, and everything nearby has to adapt." The system registered a priority shift. ARK-9 reduced the weight of environmental parameters and began evaluating something else entirely. Not the ship, not space, the crew. Kram's voice dropped. It's looking at us. Not our physiology, Leah said, our state. Ray understood instantly. It's testing who can function as a substitute environment. Silence settled heavily in the module. The Helix continued its motion, but movement felt irrelevant now, like habit persisting after purpose had changed. The fragment's boundary sharpened. It no longer needed amplification to be visible. If it manifests now, Leah said, we won't be able to claim ignorance. Ray stared at the narrowing corridor of permissibility. Then let it manifest without cover. ARK-9 responded immediately. It stopped evaluating, and for the first time since the anomaly began, the system recorded something it had never shown before. Transition condition confirmed. Imminent. The word imminent did not escalate. It settled. The Helix registered no alarms, no overrides, as if even the ship understood that warnings would arrive too late to be useful. The transition parameters no longer described a future moment. They described a condition already being met. Leah was the first to speak. It's no longer waiting, she said, and it's no longer testing. Ray studied the constraint set. There was no countdown, no trigger threshold, only a description of what had to remain true when the transition occurred, as if the system had already accepted that it would. Then there won't be another window, he said. This won't open, it will surface. Kram tightened his grip on the console. Difference? A window can close, Ray replied. A manifestation can't. The boundary of the missing fragment stopped oscillating. It became fixed, no longer negotiating its visibility. The system made no attempt to soften its presence. Compensation was gone entirely. The environment had vanished without collapse, without a final failure, as though it had never existed at all. The gardens are finished, Leah said quietly. Ray felt the truth of it ripple outward. Something fundamental had shifted. Transitions were no longer forgiving, coincidences no longer harmless. The absence of smoothing made every alignment feel deliberate. ARK-9 completed its transformation. The signal resolved into structure, but not into language. It became context, a framework within which the rest of the system began behaving differently. That's not a signal anymore, Kram said. That's a condition. Leah verified the streams one by one. It isn't transmitting information, it's redefining what's allowed. Ray remembered the sequence clearly now. The pyramid had verified readiness, the gardens had delayed consequence. Neither had been the point, they were stages. Which means stabilization is over, he said. What comes next won't protect anything. A new parameter appeared, unnumbered, unquantified. Observer dependency enabled. Leah froze. It's factoring in the observer. Kram exhaled slowly. Then we're inside the equation. Ray nodded, and there's no external reference left. The Helix continued its course, but movement no longer mattered. Space outside had become secondary. What mattered was interpretation, response, the way reality now adjusted itself based on understanding rather than action. ARK-9 no longer required an environment. It had identified a replacement. If the gardens were a buffer, Leah said, then the buffer is gone. Ray watched the final constraint settle into place, which means the next node won't stabilize, it will reveal. The system updated once more. No emphasis, no sound. Next condition detected, classification pending. Kram spoke barely above a whisper. That's not another wonder. Ray let the implication settle before answering. No, he said, it's what happens when wonders are no longer enough. The display went dark for a fraction of a second, just long enough to be noticed. Then it returned, with a different context.